One thing that I thought was interesting during that broadcast for the AFC Championship game was that Tony Romo kept comparing Mahomes to Michael Jordan, which, look, I had the same reaction. I kind of shook my head because I was like, look, dude Mahomes is great. I'm not going to say anything negative about Mahomes, but, like, can he win 2 championships before we, compare him?
Before we put him on even in the same stratosphere as Tom Brady and Peyton Manning.
Right.
Like, we can't call this guy the GOAT because he can throw a sidewinder from falling sideways. Like, he throws it like he's throwing like a Nerf ball.
Right.
I get it. He's a talented freak athlete.
Right.
We can say that. That's when it comes to that, as far as quarterbacks go, yeah, he's right up there. But
well, I mean, and we do. I mean, it's hard not to do this. I mean, I know I did this with Andrew Luck as far as, like, because of how good we thought, we were projecting what his career is going to look like before he actually goes and does it. Because I remember when we had, when we had the discussion a couple of years ago on the podcast of, like, oh, could Tom Brady potentially come to the Colts the year they got Philip Rivers? I was like, well, he wouldn't wear number 12 because I think it'd be weird. Like, and they're like, well, yeah, who cares about number 12? Because Andrew Luck didn't really. I mean, he was amazing. We feel bad that he ends up retiring, but he didn't actually, like, he never won a Super Bowl.
Anything.
Didn't win an MVP. I mean, it was impossible for him to do that in those circumstances.
He made one AFC Championship game.
Right. So it's like, we do this thing where we give all these, athletes kind of accolades before they actually get them. But I thought it was a funny kind of question to ask. How close to 7 rings does Mahomes need to get to unseat Brady as the GOAT? We always see the argument made in basketball. Speaking of Michael Jordan, people talk about, like, who's the best. When we've had this debate on our show even before, who's better, Jordan or LeBron? So I was like, let's have that same argument with Mahomes and Brady. So MJ has 6 titles. LeBron has 4. Brady currently has 7. Mahomes currently has 1. And so, kind of projecting that out, how many would he have to win to kind of get into that GOAT stratosphere? I think it's at least 4 for Mahomes. It's at least 4. Maybe 5. I'm not entirely sure. Mahomes is finishing his age 27 season. Let's say he has another 13 to 15 seasons left. So winning 3 more times is very doable as far as, like, the years are there. It's not like, oh, he's just now coming into his own at, like, age 33 and the window is shrinking. At the short end of that, he's on pace for 62,288 yards, which would put him 8th all-time, and 499 touchdowns, which would put him at 5th all-time. Brady is first in both categories. Brady has 3 MVPs. Mahomes already has 1. These points are to say that Mahomes is on pace to have a career that, even without the Super Bowls, is right there with TB12. So he'd have the MVPs, he'd have the touchdowns, he'd have the yardage. So the last thing kind of in that argument would be, how many Super Bowls has he won? Only 3 quarterbacks have won 4 Super Bowls. Obviously, Tom Brady, Montana, and Bradshaw both have 4. All 4 are also over 500 in the big game as well. Brady is 7-3. Bradshaw and Montana is 4-0. Look, the number is probably 5 here. Like I said, it's probably 5 because then you'd have those are the only 2 quarterbacks to win that amount of Super Bowls. So just he and Brady are the only 2 at that many. But I think 4 Super Bowl wins in 6 to 7 appearances, because, again, he has to be above 500. He can't, because that's the whole knock against LeBron is that, like, yeah, he's won 4, but he's also been to, like, 9 and has lost. So he's lost over half of them. But yeah, 4 Super Bowl wins in 6 to 7 appearances, 3+ MVPs, finishing top 10 in passing yards, top 5 in passing touchdowns. I think that would give Mahomes a damn good case to be considered the GOAT. But, I mean, even the fact that we're saying a case to unseat Brady might give you the answer already to that question. But no less than that, though. That's where I think Mahomes would have to be if we're going to go ahead. And that's where he has to be, as opposed to one championship making a good play in an AFC championship game like Tony Romo wanted to do.
So I think when we look at, so originally you had the question here as how many rings does Mahomes have to get to unseat Brady as the GOAT? To unseat Brady as the GOAT, he needs to get at least 7 with winning multiples in a row. It can't be like every 2 years he wins one.
Well, that's what Brady did though. Brady like every other year there for a while was in the Super
But
Bowl.
then he also reeled off like 3 in a row here. You know, he reeled off like 3 and 4 years.
By this time, yeah, by the time Mahomes is his age now, I think Brady already had 3. I think.
Yeah, yeah. I don't keep track of people's birthdays. So I struggle enough to keep track of my own family's birthdays. So trying to keep track of other people's that I don't even know personally, trying to keep track of their birthdays. Yeah. Um, but look, he's got to win. I think 7 to be able to unseat. Now to be in the conversation, he needs to win a couple more MVPs. He needs to put together some really high statistical numbers. He needs to win at least 3, I'll say, Super Bowls. Because look, when we look at the conversation of the GOAT, the greatest of all time, the greatest quarterback to ever play, the two that always come up are Brady and Peyton, Tom and Peyton. We don't really talk about Terry Bradshaw or Joe Montana, even though they won. They were both 4-0 in the Super Bowl, whereas Peyton was 2-2. But Peyton put up these unearthly numbers throughout his career and probably would still hold quite a few of the records had Tom Brady not played till he, was 45. And again, I don't know if he's 45 because I don't
Yeah,
keep track of
he's
people's
45. Yeah.
birthdays. 45, okay.
Yeah.
Same thing, like, and then you have to at least win more than one because then you look at players like Drew Brees, who held all of those records for a while and only won one Super Bowl. But Drew Brees is not in the conversation for the greatest of all time. Then you look at a player from the past like Dan Marino, who was a really, 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 really good quarterback, but never won a Super Bowl. And he's not in those conversations. So I think it comes down to just a conglomerate of things, not just winning the Super Bowls, but being able to put up consistent MVP and record breaking numbers. I think it's going to be a little bit harder for Mahomes to do that. And he's going to have to rely more on not just not record breaking numbers. It's going to be harder for him to get the record breaking numbers because he relies so much on his feet as well. A lot of their offense is nothing there. He makes something out of nothing. And that can win you Super Bowls and that can win you MVPs, but it's not going to get you the passing records or anything like that. So I think MVPs and Super Bowls are going to be Mahomes' way to get into that conversation. Everybody's kind of got some sort of niche that's in that conversation. Is that making any sense?
Yeah. So
Because there's
you're
so many players that have won a lot of Super Bowls that we just don't put into the conversation. Like Joe
but
Montana is not consistently in the conversation for greatest of all time, and we're always looking at Tom Brady and Peyton Manning.
right. So because Tom Brady is in another stratosphere, which again I think answers the question right there as far as like who's the goat. It's whatever but he's in such a different stratosphere that it has been a long time since we've heard. I mean, I think Bradshaw isn't talked about as much just because a lot of that is the steel curtain and not so much.
Right.
I mean, heck, I've back when I had a little bit more time on my hands, I watched all the Americas games, like the documentary that they used to do for, and I think they still do for the Super Bowl champions. And I think Terry Bradshaw at one point was like either benched or he didn't go into the season as like QB1, even like after some of the Super Bowl wins. It's because like he wasn't as much of a focal point of that offense. Like he was like, I'm not sitting here saying Terry Bradshaw wasn't a good quarterback. I mean, he was, but it was the fact that I think he's kind of overshadowed a bit by how good that defense was, and that kind of thing. But when Brady was first kind of having that first dynasty, he did get compared to Joe Montana, and that was kind of the comparison that a lot of people made. And I think that's why you say 3, and I just think or in that in that ballpark, and that's why like yes, he can win the MVPs. Yes, he can do all the stuff with the numbers, but I think he can. I think that's why the Super Bowls are so critical, because the Super Bowl, he can win the Super Bowls without having the MVPs and all that stuff to be considered, but he can't like have all those numbers and then not have the Super Bowls, which I think is what you're trying to say. Like you have to
Right.
have both, but you definitely need the Super Bowls to be able to do that.
But
Um, but
Peyton's only got two.
I don't know that I I don't
I
know.
think Peyton is looked at as one of the greatest of all time because of the mind that he had. The way that he could read a game and read a defense and just maneuver his team on the fly put him in that conversation.
Yeah, and I
He
also
had an uncanny ability that not many people had. Like the way, yeah, it was just. I mean, yes, he could throw the ball amazing. He was a really great quarterback, but the way he could just be like 3 steps ahead of his opponent, it felt like, was I think what really put him in that conversation.
right. And I think that also, why it's kind of changed a little bit too is that it's the same argument we hear with MJ and LeBron is like one of the big things that gets talked about there is like, oh, well, they played in different eras. That's kind of the same why we don't talk about Montana and Bradshaw as much now because like, oh, well, the game is completely different from what it was back then than it is now. But yeah, I think
I
definitely
don't know how much different it is from Montana because Montana was in a very pass happy offense.
right, but still like the way like
I guess
go
compared to
go
what like nowadays there are like passing is the name of the game and you run to set up the pass where back
and the
then
rules
you
and
ran
are so
you
much more geared to passing and that kind of thing, like with the defensive
yeah.
holding and pass
So
interference.
they were a
Like,
little bit more of ahead of their time
right.
with Montana.
So, but yeah, I think definitely. So I think the number we land on is like 4-ish. Is where
To be in the conversation.
right.
To
Yeah,
unseat Brady, you have to at least win 7 and one more MVP than he ever did.
yeah. I mean,
But to be in the conversation, I think you need to win 3 more, including the one you've already got.
oh, so you do need to have 4. That's what you're saying. You need to win 3 more, is
Yeah,
what you're saying. Okay, I thought you
yeah.
meant just 3 alone. I was like, I don't know
No,
if
no.
he needs
I
to
may
win
have
only
been, I
one.
think I worded that wrong.
Yeah,
But yeah, you need 3 more.
I gotcha. One person, like you mentioned, that has enjoyed the script this year is Jalen Hurts, and um, that gets us into we talked about Mahomes' legacy with this win. What would a Super Bowl win do for Jalen Hurts? And the question on that side of the thing, that side of the spectrum is, with a Super Bowl ring, is Jalen Hurts a top 3 quarterback in the NFL right now? Um, my answer to that question is yes. I think it's safe to say, obviously, unanimous 1-2 is Mahomes Burrow. I think Mahomes Burrow is 1-2. I think that's what a majority of people would go with. Now, I think after that, especially after this postseason, the waters get a little bit muddier. Looking at this season's playoff quarterbacks, obviously Burrow, Mahomes, there's not a big enough sample size for Purdy. Josh Allen has struggled to get over the hump. Kirk Cousins has never made it past the divisional round. Brady retired. Dak has never made it past the divisional round. Lamar Jackson has an MVP, but has struggled to stay healthy. Tua certainly has had his health concerns. Then you look at the quarterbacks like Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, Daniel Jones, Geno Smith. They were all good this season, but is this season the norm or the outlier? Which you can certainly say for Jalen Hurts as well, but Hurts would have that Super Bowl ring or that Super Bowl trophy. Only 6 active quarterbacks have won a Super Bowl. That's Aaron Rodgers, Joe Flacco, Russell Wilson, Nick Foles, Patrick Mahomes, and Matthew Stafford. I would take Hurts above all of them right now. Like, with how Aaron Rodgers played this season, wouldn't go with him. Who knows about Stafford, but like those would be the only 2 that I would consider. Obviously Joe Flacco's a backup, Nick Foles is a backup, Russell Wilson's coming off of like his worst season of his career. So I think I would take Hurts over all of them right now. So like you might take other quarterbacks. There's other quarterbacks that you may. It's kind of like the draft. You may like their pedigree a little bit more, but there's question marks with all of them. When I think of the best blank right now, I think of if you were to redraft the league right now, who would be the third quarterback off the board? And I think with the Super Bowl ring, it'd be hard to not take Jalen Hurts, especially with his ability to beat you both with his arms and his legs. Reverse it. His arm and his legs, not just one leg. He beat you with both of them. I think that if he would be the third quarterback off the board if he were to get that Super Bowl ring. So I would put him as the top of a top 3 quarterback in the league currently with the ring. I think he's top 5 right now without it, but I would go ahead and put him in that top 3 category if they were to win the Super Bowl on Sunday.
Yeah, I wanted to say no, but then the argument you just laid out swayed me
Thank you.
because in my mind they've got you thinking, well, no, Josh Allen's in that conversation, but you're right. Josh Allen has failed to get over the hump. I haven't seen any progression from Josh Allen, really. So yeah, I think you're right. If Jalen Hurts were to win a Super Bowl, get the raise the Lombardi Trophy this weekend, that puts him as a top 3 quarterback in this league. I wanted to say no because I wanted to see him put up a
Do it again
similar
next year.
performance
Yeah.
next year. Not meaning like, oh, win another Super Bowl, but like statistically and get his team back in that position again. Because I want to, before I crown anybody as a top 3, I want to make sure there's consistency there. At least with Josh Allen, he's consistently getting his team within the conversation. I want to make sure this Philadelphia Eagles team isn't a one-hit wonder because we all probably after last year would have said, "Oh yeah, Matthew Stafford, holy moly, definitely a top 3 quarterback now." And look, he's coming back with all of that again. And then the wheels fell off.
Yeah.
So that's the only hesitation I have of saying, "Oh yeah, he's definitely a top 3 quarterback if he wins the Super Bowl this year." I want to put him there, but like on probationary status,
Well, I mean
if that makes sense.
that's what right now is. It doesn't. It's not a definite. This is the like we're not saying Jalen Hurts is the best like top 3 quarterback ever or the top 3 quarterback like of the decade or anything like that. It's just like
Oh no, yeah, yeah,
as of right now, power rankings. Who's who's number 1, who's number 2, who's number 3, and like
yeah,
the kind of consensus going into the season and even throughout the season, Burrow, Mahomes, Allen. But I mean, you bring up Allen. I mean, you're right. He didn't take a next step, and not only that, it just kind of seemed like he kind of sleptwalked through the 2 playoff games. Like he had that really good first few series against the Dolphins, and then from there it was just kind of ho hum the rest of the way. From Josh Allen. Whereas like even last year, you had that amazing. Now I get it. The circumstances were a little bit different in terms of like you were playing your the big brother Patriots in the first round and you scored on 7. You scored on 7 out of 7 possessions, and then the next game was that just insane game against the Chiefs. So I get it. It was a little bit different circumstances. This time you were the 2 seed. You had home field. You're gonna kind of it was almost a foregone conclusion that it was going to be Bills Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, and so you kind of got that air that like they didn't really have that fire that they should have had in those 2 playoff games. So that's why I'm like even now like injury concerns for Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. I mean, I saw a TikTok where someone was like playoff Josh Allen is primetime Kirk Cousins, and I was like I mean. There's a compelling argument for why that's true. I still think I like Josh Allen better in a playoff game than I do Kirk Cousins in primetime, but I mean, I don't see really too many lies there.
yeah, yeah. I see what you're saying. I mean, I'm just also looking at like you said, if you were to redraft the league right now, who are the first 3 quarterbacks off the board? And I could see Jalen Hurts, but at the same time, there's an argument to be had at the same time for Trevor Lawrence.
Well, right. Also, too, like this is with a Super Bowl. Like
That's true.
If Jalen Hurts doesn't have a Super Bowl, then I don't know that I would put him 3. I think he's top 5 personally, but I think I think with a Super Bowl proven, hey, this guy has gone out and won a Super Bowl. like a proven track record, I think you go with Jalen Hurts.
Yeah,
So
yeah, definitely.
we're going to go ahead and do our prediction. And just like we did in that NFC Championship and AFC Championship preview, we're going to also give you one 3+ leg parlay for all of you betting folks out there as well. So my parlay is this. It's a plus 950, so pretty decent payout if this one hits. I've got Chiefs money line. Miles Sanders and Travis Kelce as anytime touchdown scorers. We mentioned, how good the running game is for Philadelphia. We mentioned how crucial Travis Kelce is to the passing game. And I have Patrick Mahomes with 250 plus yards and 3+ touchdowns in the big game in Super Bowl 57. My prediction looking at this, I really thought I was going to go Eagles here, and it really is a toss up. I mean, this reason why I went Kansas City money line is literally because it's like the spread is like -1. Like that's literally what it is. It's 1 point, which at that point you might as well just go money line because it makes more sense to do that. Mahomes is the better quarterback, more Super Bowl experience. We already talked about that. The Eagles are better running the ball, but that's where the Kansas City defense excels. And just overall, I just like the road that it took for Kansas City to get to this point. Now, I think these two teams have combined for 4 playoff games. And in all 4 of those playoff games, even though Kansas City's were obviously closer, it never felt like either team was really tested, if that makes sense. Like, on the Eagles side, they got a Giants team that, like, yes, they had, barely snuck by them at home like a couple weeks ago late in the regular season, but also throttled them at MetLife Stadium even a few weeks prior to that. And then they played a San Francisco team that halfway through the first quarter didn't have a quarterback. For Kansas City, yeah, it was close between the Jaguars and the Chiefs, but you really never thought the Chiefs were in danger of losing that game. Same with like the Bengals played a better game, but you thought if the Bengals won that game a couple weeks ago that it's going to be because the Chiefs lost it, not because the Bengals won it, because the Chiefs kind of dominated that game. I don't think the Bengals led it at any point in that game. So, but I think overall, what the Chiefs have had to go through in this postseason, I think they're just more battle tested. I think they've been to the Super Bowl before. We've talked about that, but also just this postseason and just in general what they have to deal with in the AFC as opposed to the NFC. I mean, I brought up that stat earlier, and that kind of turned me off to some of the Philadelphia defensive stats. Like, don't take anything away. Philadelphia still has a great defense, and they're a great team overall. But the fact that they've just played, like I said, they have all these great stats against quarterbacks, and yet a lot of the quarterbacks they faced this season weren't all that good. A lot of the passing teams they played weren't really the best passing teams that they could have played. Now, granted, I didn't look into those same numbers for the Chiefs. Maybe they're similar, but just the road that it took Kansas City to get here, I like it a little bit more. I think, like I said, I think they're a little bit more battle tested. I'm going Kansas City to win the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah, so for me, the 3 leg parlay that I've got at plus 1,000, Chiefs money line, Pat Mahomes alternate passing yards at 300 or more, and Travis Kelce to score 2 or more touchdowns. Honestly, I think that's what it's going to take for the Chiefs to win this game. You need to have a huge game from Mahomes and from Travis Kelce. And you know, like I said earlier, when you get to the Super Bowl, experience sometimes matters over that first time being there. Yeah, I do believe there's several players on that Eagles team that were on the last Super Bowl team. Um, so they're a good veteran presence.
Jason Kelce, I know, was there.
Yeah, but this Chiefs team, like I said earlier, they've been on both sides of it at the Super Bowl. They've been celebrating, and they've also been watching another team celebrate. And they know how both of those feel, and they know which one they don't want to feel again. I think that matters in this. With it being, is this their third appearance in
Yep.
4 years?
Something like that, because, yeah, it was Chiefs 49ers, then it was Rams Patriots in between that? No. There was another one in between it. Wait, did they go back to back years?
I feel like they.
Did they go
I'm,
Patriot? Because okay, yeah, they would have
I
had
will
to. They
say
would have had to have because it was 2020.
2020 screwed
Right,
everything
right,
up.
exactly. So yeah, it was the 2020 Super Bowl that they were in it. Then 2021, yeah. So they did go back to back years. So yeah, this is their third appearance in 4 years.
So this is becoming habit for them. They know how to prepare for it. They're not going to be overwhelmed by. I mean, not to say that Philadelphia is going to be overwhelmed, but they're going to. The Chiefs are going to be less overwhelmed. So the Chiefs, this is what they expect, and that kind of calmness will help them in this game. I think, and like I said, it's going to be a close game. It's going to be a tough battle, but I think ultimately that experience of being in this game, being on both sides of winning and losing in this game, and just being consistently knowing this is where you are supposed to be year after year, and that's where the Chiefs have gotten. I think all of that leads to them raising the Lombardi Trophy yet again.